Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And there it is. And here we are. Man, I'm excited. I'm always so excited at the beginning, and this is no different. I'm stoked. Why? My guest today, we're going to jam on all the topics I can't wait to talk about, things I've been dying to talk about. And here's a little glimmer. You look him up on LinkedIn, skydiving photo on LinkedIn. Like, how cooler can you get than that? And then you dive in, you realize this guy has a passion for B2B, for marketing, most importantly, for podcasts. You all know that's near and dear to my heart. He's a thought leader. He's a mentor. He's an entrepreneur. Many companies. We decided to pick the most important one to tell you about. Co-founder and CRO at Speak On Podcasts. Mark Colgan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Casey. I'm really great intro. Thank you. And I'm really happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. And now we're streaming here. We're having a live conversation. You're in Portugal right now.
Yeah, in Lisbon, Portugal. And I've got shorts on. I won't stand up, but yeah, the sun's out, and I'm very happy.
So sun's out, guns out, right? Is that how it's supposed to go? I think that's the Vegas saying.
Yeah. But I put an actual shirt on today for you. I didn't want to do this one topless.
We haven't done a topless podcast yet. Maybe we'll put that next time.
Yeah, it was summer season.
Summer season. This is the spring. It's still a little chilly out.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm excited to talk to you. I know you work in podcasts, and I can't wait to dive more into all these things. But let me pass you something real quick. Over the ocean. It's heavy, but I know you work out. Oh, here we go. Okay. You
Nice.
got it? Take it. It's Thor's hammer.
I got it. Yeah.
Grab it.
Hold on.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Take Thor's hammer. Smash for me some kind of myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Just set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah, there's so many, Casey. So I think let's just pick a couple. I think one is the misconception around size. And when I say size, I mean podcast audience size, not the other kind of conversation that you can have about that. So
this is the Hardcore Marketing Show.
It is. I don't know how hardcore we want to go, but no, audience size when it comes to podcasting. A lot of conversations that we have through the customers that we work with that speak on podcasts, they say to us, like, we want to be on the largest podcast. We want to be on the ones that have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of downloads. And I often say to them, it's like, okay, that's a reasonable question. However, they're not going to be the most targeted of all podcasts that are going to have your ideal audience in. It's going to be so broad. You're going to have lots of people who are listening because they're a fan of the host. Maybe they're a fan of one or two topics, but they're not going to be where your ideal audiences are spending time. And one of the stories that I tell is I spoke on a podcast which only receives around, I think, on average, 200 to 300 downloads per month, which sounds tiny, but that's actually pretty medium when it comes to podcasting, because we've just hit 2 million podcasts that are live on Apple from the Apple statistics. So there's 2 million podcasts out there. The majority of those don't get many downloads at all, and that's the sad reality of it. Not to say that podcasting isn't good if you're not getting downloads, but when you look at size in terms of audience and you're looking to work out which podcast to speak on, I always say relevancy first. I would much rather have 30 people who are my ideal audience, who have a challenge and a problem that I can help them overcome, versus 3,000 people who maybe one or two has the problem. And so going back to the example that I use is that I closed 4 customers off that podcast interview that I did. I was on a podcast speaking about cold email campaigns, and the company I worked for sold data and lead enrichment for B2B brands. So as everybody listening to that podcast was looking to improve their cold email campaigns. One part of improving a cold email campaign is having the right data to start with. I talked about what we do with our customers, the campaigns that we run, the successes that we've seen, talked through case studies. I talked through all the fuck ups as well, all the mistakes that I see happening too. But it was really raw, really authentic. And I had 8 or 9 people connect with me after within the week of the podcast going live. And I turned 4 of those into customers. So that's a small audience, but it still works. So rather than size, think of relevancy.
Right. You could have been on some crazy bullshit podcast that got 10,000 listens. I mean, how does it even, right? 10,000 listens and nobody, maybe they listen to you for like 5 seconds because you're like, what the hell is he talking about? I don't
Yeah,
want that. I don't have a, I'm not in marketing. I'm in some completely different other, I sell ice cream at a stand. Like, I
yeah.
don't even know what this is.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. It just comes down to relevance. So size doesn't necessarily matter. I think another thing as well is that from a performance marketing point of view, we're always looking at the numbers. What's the return on ad spend? What's our conversion rates of visitors to free trial signups on our website? Podcasting is a brand building activity. It's not necessarily a demand gen or lead generation strategy. So I think people just need to think about it and approach it in a slightly different way. And I often say, what's the return on investment of having your CEO speak to hundreds of ideal customers for 30 minutes, 45 minutes in their ears? That's an
Mm.
extremely intimate experience that you've just created for your prospects, for your potential customers who are getting to know, like, and trust your company. And when your CEO or whoever your thought leader is in the company is out there speaking on multiple podcasts and being heard, when people come to evaluate products, and I'm not going to name any products here, Casey, but if I look at marketing automation, if I look at sales technology, the
Okay.
products pretty much do the same thing. They have a different skin, they call different things differently, but they just do the same thing.
Some are
What
easier to
I
use than others. And yeah.
Some are a lot easier to use
Yeah.
than others, yeah. Some have built an ecosystem of people to help you use them.
Sure.
But when you're making an evaluation, and especially even more so when we're looking at this product-led growth where people can sign up themselves, um, who are you? Who is if your prospect is listening to you to podcasts and they hear you talking about the successes that your customers are having or the problems that you're helping people overcome, they're going to more likely have that affinity with your brand over the other, especially when your product is commoditized.
Boom. There it
There we
is.
go.
Man, the fiber optic under the ocean just caught on fire
Yeah, I think so.
miles
I
below
think
the
so.
ocean. There's so many things to unpack here. So a couple things. 2 million podcasts on Apple. Congratulations, everyone. You said what is middle of the road? 200 downloads. Is that an episode or?
Yeah, so this is what's so difficult. It's such a fragmented distribution of podcasts that even most podcast hosts don't really know, or they can't trust the data that they have in regards to the downloads. You've also got the argument is what's a download and what's a stream. Do people download it and even listen to it? It's a bit like ebooks. A lot of people sign up, they
Yeah.
download the ebook and never look at it as well. So there's
Right.
no real clear indication as to what the total download stats are. The ones where you find that they do have that data will be the much larger media-based podcasts where they're selling sponsorship because they kind of need that data to sell the sponsorship packaging. I tried to look for the stats in front ahead of this call, and I didn't have them. But Casey, I'm happy to share them with you, so we can maybe put them in the
Yeah.
show
Cool.
notes. But
Yeah.
there are average numbers of downloads per episode, especially when it comes to the B2B world. But again, the other point is like just take a step back. By having a podcast or by speaking on a podcast, you're creating content by just speaking,
Yeah.
and there's so much you can do with that. And you've got content teams going, what do we put in the newsletter this week? Oh, we've got a new product update, and it's like your customers don't care about your product, they want to try and solve a problem. But if you've just had your CMO or CEO talk about overcoming a challenge or some of the challenges that they see coming in the next 6 months, that's really valuable content that you can share with your audience. So what you can do with just one interview is huge, and I think a lot of people overlook that.
It's interesting. Um, I'm finding myself falling into the trap over and over again, like Groundhog Day. We're saying really, it's not the size, people. It's the relevancy. It's the audience. And then you have these little vanity metrics or whatnot. You're
Hmm.
like, oh, so how many downloads? It's how many curious. Oh,
Yeah.
what's my size compared to everybody else, right? You're like, oh, but then again, you're reminded it's not even about that.
Hmm.
It's about the relevant targets. Man, I was having a conversation earlier, and someone mentioned that there was a podcast for um, government contracting agents, like people who sell bids to the United States, and
Hmm.
they buy products for the government. And there's like 300 of those people, but
Yeah.
half of them listen to this one podcast. So they
Yeah.
may only have 150 people listening,
Hmm.
but that's the majority of the people listening in a very niche group. And
Yeah.
there are many companies that would love to get the attention of those 150 people and
Certainly.
sponsor that podcast. And so, yeah, it isn't really about, oh, can we get, there's only 300 of them anyways, but man, if you've got a
Well,
sizable showing, yeah.
yeah, and here's the other thing, right? Trade publications and trade magazines for years have been selling sponsorship in their magazines. It's the whole way they've been able to fund their business. The amount of time, so I used to work in recruitment. I used to go to office. I used to door to door, kind of go around a business park or like, yeah, lots of different offices. The amount of times I was waiting in an office's
Yep.
reception, and they have the trade magazines nicely put on the coffee table with the plastic still on them. So yes, they distribute 10,000 copies a week or 100,000 copies a week, but how did you ever know what people were looking at that advert unless you had a specific number, a specific URL, which is actually quite sophisticated? But
True.
you didn't. Yet you were fine because they said it's got sent to 100,000 people, but the majority of trade magazines that I ever saw still had the plastic on. I was subscribed to a couple when I was working in HR, never opened them. I ended up canceling my subscription. It's just we're so concerned about the numbers and the vanity metrics, versus what is the long term positive impact of just getting my message out there to more people.
So is there a metric that we could be concerned that's better than some of these other ones, or is even that question wrong?
It's we need to have metrics. We need to
Yeah.
justify that return on spend for anything that we do. So there are ways to track it. You could look at the organic brand and increase in terms of the traffic. What we recommend to a lot of our customers is have a specific landing page and a call to action, which you just direct people to. So only people that hear the podcast. But then even then we say, but listen, people are in the car, people are in the shower, people are out on their runs listening to podcasts. It's not always going to be directly attributed to it. So it's a bit of a tricky one. But at the same time, I feel a little bit like, well, it's the same as PR has always been, and advertising has always been, offline advertising. Online advertising, you can track a lot more, but 50% of your marketing is working. You just don't know which 50%.
Right. Right. Man, one of the things you mentioned earlier, the value of being in the ears for 30 minutes. If that CEO is in the ears of someone, can you put a value on that? I mean, it's almost like we're saying it's priceless, but has anyone tried to, because
Yeah.
you're focusing on brand, like what is the value of that brain space?
Well, look at it so I don't know what the actual metric would be, but look at
Yeah.
it in the other way. Like you would go to a conference and you would have to pay to speak on stage and also to have a stand at the and exhibit. Whereas on a podcast, it's completely free. Okay, some podcasts do charge to appear on the show. Um,
Really?
yeah, they do. They do. But yeah, so you would normally have to pay for that, the privilege to be up there. And obviously, when you're up there on stage, you are automatically perceived as a thought leader, somebody who knows what they're talking about. But you can achieve exactly the same thing with podcasts, and you can do them virtually, which means you can do more of them as well. So you can cover the market without even having to leave your room. Now, just take one conference where you had to fly from North Carolina to San Francisco. That time it takes, the flight, the cost, the hotel, the exhibition cost, not even there anymore. You're just having an hour conversation.
Wow. Wow. I love that parallel. There's a simple method. If you went to a conference, you would have to pay for that speaking slot. Maybe
Hmm.
even some people are invited, but if you're trying to interject yourself in there, you're paying some money. You're sponsoring a booth, and that's a number right there. So it's a little different medium, but it's a great parallel to just beginning to talk to the value. And I think the long term value of even people listening to this podcast, I feel like they probably know me more than I know them, but I want to know them. But it's like we've been on this journey together. We've heard each other on these podcasts, and and some people reach out. By the way, I love when people reach out. Please reach out, say hi, tell me you're
Yeah,
listening, because it's awesome. I love having that mutual connection and saying, "Oh, you're listening. I'm a fan of you too."
yeah.
But yeah, it's really is a for me. It's the relationship, and that is the priceless part of it.
It is. It's huge, and we'll share something that we spoke very briefly before we went on air.
Yep.
You asked me if we provided a service. I said that we don't, and you were like, "Oh, actually, I provide that service. Is that
Right.
is that something you'd be interested in partnering in the future?" And we've just started that conversation because I'm speaking on your podcast. So
Sure.
a lot of, again, it's reframing what you want to get out of speaking on podcasts. It's the relationship you can build with the host, that is also a benefit of speaking on podcasts, and that has nothing to do with audience size. It could be that there's a JV opportunity, it could be referral, it could be affiliate, well, maybe not hundreds of ways, but dozens of ways that you can work with each other. And now you and I are going to we've spoken for half an hour already. We both enjoyed that conversation. We're going to enjoy today's conversation, and I'm sure we'll speak again in the future. So it's developing these relationships with the influencers in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. Next step, clearly beers in the pub, like some kind
Absolutely.
of drinking activity must commence next.
Yeah, well, when we first spoke, it was St. Patrick's Day, so we'll have to make sure we meet up on St. Patrick's Day next year when we definitely can.
Awesome, man. I've got this gigantic, ridiculous, I got it right here. This giant, ridiculous green hat.
It's brilliant.
There you go. And I can only
we
wear
can just
this.
Pretend.
Yeah, once a year. That's all I got. So yeah, next, or by next, your continent or mine, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier about branding being, in your eyes, is brand the number one outcome that comes from? I mean, obviously we just talked to a bunch of them, but is brand the number one outcome?
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say building that brand, building that awareness. And, one of the things as well is you could spend thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads. But when you're spending money on ads, you're they are on Facebook, they are browsing the web, they're browsing the internet, and they're being targeted on ads and sometimes followed around. I'm a marketer, right? So I see these things more than maybe your consumers do when they're not marketers. However, you're interrupting me, and I'm on Facebook to look at funny cat videos. I'm not necessarily there thinking about buying procuring a new software. When you have people listening to podcasts, they're actively putting their hand up to say, I'm here to listen, I'm here to learn, and I want to learn. That's why I'm subscribed. That's why I listen to every episode that comes on. I trust the host to bring on people who know their stuff and can deliver value. And when you've got people in that mindset, you're finding people potentially a little bit lower in the buyer's journey. And if they're not in the buyer's journey just yet, you're still able to capture them in the top of the funnel in that awareness piece, because they're now becoming aware. They're like, oh, didn't realize there was a software for that. Oh, I've been thinking about this, but didn't know that this even existed or this solution existed. So I think when it comes to building brands, podcasting is a great, not just because I have a business in it, I was doing it before I set up Speak on Podcasts as well. Going on podcast, speaking, giving value, sharing as much as I could. Partly one of the reasons is I want to rid people of sending crap cold email. Yeah. I get so fed up. It's not hard to get cold email right, yet still the majority of people get it completely wrong.
Yeah, they still do. I really had a nice takeaway when you were saying what you were saying just now. The ads interrupt, and I love that you have that expertise in marketing, so we can really jam on podcasts and marketing. Ads interrupt, and then I wrote down podcast serve. It's like a servant thing versus like a take. You're not trying to take their attention and take their money. You're just like, here is content. And the other thing I wrote down, next to they're putting their hand up, is what you'd said, was that they trust the host will find good people that they want to learn. And I never thought about that before, that it is kind of like on me to make sure I'm not bringing in some ridiculous hooligan that doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's been instances in the past where you've interviewed somebody and thought, I can't air that. I can't share that.
I don't think I've ever talked about this. There was one episode. Yeah, I think we chatted briefly, but there was one episode. This is like secretive stuff, people. You don't tell anyone else, everyone listening. So there's one episode that it was just not good. The person was like, I like to use this word, grimy. Like they were just, it was one of those like SEO weird, pyramid scheme type people. And I was just like, it got the weird feeling on the prep call, and the show happened, and you could tell this person just trying to scam people. So it actually went like 8 minutes, and then I called it a day, and I was like, thanks for coming. All right, take care, everything. Never aired it. The person didn't even realize that we cut it short. They're like, okay, cool, thanks.
I'm not sure if we spoke about this before. I coach outbound sales reps, so sales development reps that are in their 0 to 6 months of their role through the Sales Impact Academy. So I teach a cohort 7 times a year. And one of the things I share in there is like, my sales strategy is not to sell. It's actually to build a relationship with somebody, have a conversation that leaves them thinking two things. Mark knows his stuff, and I would quite like to go for a beer with Mark if he was ever in my city or town. Like that's all my motivation. That's all my goal ever is. And I do that with friends. I do that with professional life, is like give value, share without expecting anything in return, and be likable enough that people would grab a coffee or would grab a beer with you if you were ever in town.
That's my favorite kind of sales, because it just feels like you're trading baseball cards with friends. You're like,
Yeah, absolutely.
not trying to get something over someone. I love that.
Yeah,
Share without expecting something in return.
yeah, and I think as well, when you have that mentality, it removes the ego away from things as well. Because I think a lot of salespeople, and it's not just the salespeople, it's the companies. The companies place themselves as the hero in the journey of the customer,
Mm,
but nobody wants, like, your customers are the hero, and you as the company and you as your product or service, you're the guide. You're not the hero. You're helping your customer become the hero. So you are Yoda to Skywalker. You are Q to James Bond. It's you've got to position yourself as the guide and become that known, like, and trusted individual that people come to get some no BS advice. Like I don't sell things to people if I don't think I can help them, and I'll say no,
right.
we can't help you, but here's who can. Go and speak to Michael. He's a great guy. He's much better set up to help you with your specific needs right now, because I've never had a happy customer. That I've worked before where other people were doing the selling and I was kind of taking them through the onboarding, and they were completely missold what
Mm.
they had thought, and they just churn. And yes, the salesperson got their commission, but for the long time revenue growth of the business, it was working against us.
Yeah, that short-sighted, short-term play just it never really works out for anyone. It doesn't really work out for the sales rep in the long run either,
No.
because there's some great renewals they could have gotten from that, or some great referrals and all those things, and you get none of that when you trick people. Expectation setting is just so critical. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and also another thing as well, and we are really riffing here, so stop me if you want. But one of the other things as well is, like, people buy from people, and it's a bit cliche, but I've got customers now at Speak on Podcasts that I worked with in the previous company I ran, and I've previously worked with them in a different company. They just come with me because they
Yeah.
know, I don't have the Midas touch. Not everything I do turns into gold, but they trust that I will go and work for a company or build a company that delivers really good value,
Yeah.
solving a problem that they have. And I think, yes, that short-term mindset is there, but I get it. I get it when I speak to the sales development reps. They've got to book 20 meetings, they've got to make X amount of dials, they have to do this, they have to do that, and it's all done by month and quarter. So I get it. But the most successful reps that I coach and that I see go on to do even better take that step back, take the long-term view, and thinking, I am going to be selling something, and even if it's just yourself, for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So how do I do that in a credible and authentic way now? And how will that benefit me in the future? And you might not know how it's going to benefit you in the future, but if you do good, you give value, you're authentic and likable, you're never going to have a problem selling anything.
Boom, dude. What do you
Boom.
not do? Training sales reps, you starting companies, getting people on podcasts, which we will definitely talk about in a little bit. Man, you're a
I
busy
don't
guy.
sleep.
No
Maybe
sleep?
that's it. No, I do sleep. I sleep like a baby, actually.
Is particular amount of hours a night, or is it you kind of wing it? And you're in Portugal, so you partying like crazy and you're waking up at like 4 p.m. or
Well, I'm actually almost 2 months into this challenge of called 75 hard, where it's 75 days of exercise. You got to exercise twice a day, no alcohol, no cheat meals, no. You got to read 10 pages of it. You got to take a profile, like a progression pick. If you fail any one of these things, you have to start from day one. So
God,
I'm much more disciplined at the moment. My routine is pretty tight. I get about 7 hours of sleep.
75 hard. So okay, so
Yeah.
I'm curious now. So in you got to okay, so tell me what are the different things you got to do? So no drinking?
You got no drinking alcohol. You have to stick to a meal plan. It doesn't say it has to be a specific plan, but you have to stick to a meal plan. You can't have any cheat meals that are outside of that meal plan. You've got to work out twice a day. One of those workouts has to be outside, and it's for 45 minutes each workout. So it's an hour and a half of working out each day. You have to read 10 pages of a non-fiction book, and you have to take a progress picture every day. I hate
Yeah.
routine. I quite like spontaneity. So I struggled with it at the beginning, but since I've got into the groove of it, it's become a new habit. It's completely fine. I've lost over a stone and a half of weight. I had a very social Christmas and New Year in
Yeah.
Portugal. Came back and I was like, I need to do something about this. But just a real simple thing, Casey, is that going to bed at night. I work hard. I turn off the laptop as early as I can. But when you run a business, there's lots of things that come up, especially when you're a remote company. And there'll be some nights where I'd be watching Netflix and I'm like, I worked hard today. I'm going to just watch another episode. Like I deserve this. I'm going to reward myself and unwind by watching an extra episode. It'll get to 1, maybe 1:30.
Yeah.
then I'd have to stop, and then I'd wake up the next day feeling a little bit tired and knowing that I should have gone to sleep earlier. Whereas by doing this 75 hard challenge, it's kind of I don't watch or binge anymore. Everything is more controlled and a lot more planned, which has been great for me.
Are you gonna like go to Ibiza after you're done the challenge and just rage hard after this structure? Or do you think you're gonna continue it? Because it sounds like
I'm
some legit structure.
Yeah, it is, and it's taught. The Andy Frisella, who's the guy who invented it. He says it's very much a mental challenge. It's a mental fitness rather than it is the physical, because really you could for your 2 workouts just go for a walk if you wanted to. I haven't. I've been doing different types of workouts, but what I'm going to do, I'm missing the fun side of things because this really doesn't. I had to go to the tax office today and I then couldn't do my workout in the morning. So now I've got to do my workout in the evening and it's messed up my whole schedule. I don't like that part of it, but I will certainly keep up certain parts of the program. Whether or not I do it as strictly, probably not. But my friends like, oh, what are you going to eat first? What are you going to go and grab some beers? And I was like, I probably will in the first week. I definitely want a pizza. I definitely want a couple of beers with some friends. But I've just got so much out of doing this exercise so far that I'm probably going to be much more clean and more disciplined in my life moving forward.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
Those kind of challenges, especially the short term ones where you can just sort of like, I'll have to check this out because last year, every now and then, different months, I'll make up for a month like this challenge. So I remember last January it was like salad January. For
Right. Okay.
real, if I wanted something to eat, I could only eat a salad. Now,
Uh-huh.
have a steak, but had to be on a bed of salad. Like it was,
Yeah.
all intents and purposes, if you bought it at a restaurant, it would have to be under the salad category.
Nice.
And in the the first day of February, the first thing I ate was a salad because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just never fine.
Yeah.
So some of those things continue on, but yeah,
Yeah.
having
Well,
those cleanses are really powerful.
and it's 75 days because he believes that 30 days isn't long enough to really form a life-changing habit. Yes, it's enough to give you some
Totally.
short-term results, but not a lot enough for a long-term habit. Like, for example, I come from quite a big Irish family. I'm a very social person, enjoy a beer with some friends. I'm quite my arm can get twisted so easy. It's like, Mark, do you want to come and grab some beers? Like,
Come
yes,
on, man, let's go.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Whereas I've tried a couple of non-alcoholic beers, 0% beer, same taste, no drunkenness, and a lot more healthy for you. So I think for me in the future, I've got no problem with going out to see my friends, still being social, but just having a non-alcoholic beer because I don't want it to, I don't want to feel groggy or a little bit hungover the next day or put unnecessary calories in my body. So that was something that's definitely changed, and I haven't even finished yet, but I'm already thinking 0% beer, get nice taste, cold, refreshing beer, especially sitting out in the sun. It's lovely, but
Yeah.
then you don't have any of the negative effects of it.
You don't have to walk it off later. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good
exactly.
point. Whenever you can give up something, I found that it kind of helps you see if you were using it as a crutch or as like some kind of self-medication, whether it's alcohol or food or
Mm,
any kind of activity. You're like, yeah, I was totally using that to
yeah,
stress when, and well, what am I going to do now? I guess I should probably go work out, instead of
yeah,
using some, candy or chocolate or whatever that vice might. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening has something,
yeah,
but
of
when you
course.
give that particular thing up for just a little bit, you realize, yeah, that
Yeah,
was my go-to.
and and I don't need it anymore. Like
I
it's
don't need
not.
it anymore.
I
That's
don't
the
need it. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not dependent on it. Yeah.
sick. Well, quick question. You're so organized, you got all these things going for you. What keeps you up at night, whether in the marketing world, the podcast world? What
Mm.
what are the challenges that you have and that you're really kind of contemplating? And I'm sure you're not
Yeah.
staying up late because you're going right to bed because of the 75 challenge, but what kind of is on your mind these days?
Yeah, I have an ongoing joke with my team at Speak on Podcast. So we've grown to about 16 people now, and I am
Congrats.
militant. Thank you. I'm militant when it comes to consistency in fonts and formatting of all the spreadsheets and all the working documents that we have, because I believe the way you do one thing is how you do everything. If you've got different font sizes, different font types, different different bold, different colors, it just create and what doesn't help is just not scalable. So when one person is ill and somebody has to take over, it makes it harder for people. So I'm always thinking of the long term, whereas I know that my team think in the daily, the weekly, monthly tasks that they have. I'm thinking yearly. So I joke with them and say that I get notifications on my phone when a spreadsheet is filled in with the wrong font and the wrong size, and I was like, that's what keeps me up at night. It's an ongoing joke that we have, but I think what that really comes down to is quality. That's what
Yeah.
keeps me up at night. Is how do I hire on a consistent basis, train and onboard people in a consistent way that ensures the quality of our service it remains the same, and if not improves over time. So it's about finding the right people, and then also once those right people are in, it's how do I nurture this culture of continuous improvement and also caring about what they do. I don't want people coming in just to follow a checklist. I want people to come in and care and question as well. So
Mm.
yeah, hiring and people is what keeps me up at night.
Man, the right people just solves the problems. You know, the wrong people
100%. Yeah.
creates the problems.
Yeah.
It's definitely a challenge. What's exciting you about the changes these days in the industry and, you know, podcasting and the way it's going? Where do you see it going, and what's got you excited?
So I think if I take a step back, one of the things that excites me the most is that, and unfortunately it took COVID for this to kind of happen, is the shift in the industry of people saying, let's lead with empathy. Let's care what our customers are going through. Now, I've always cared what my customers were going through, and I've always had empathy. But I think it forced a lot of companies to reevaluate the way that they market and the way that they communicate and what content they produce. I loved it this time last year, the amount of big brands that were collaborating with each other to produce content about, I'm in the sales industry. So it's like, how do you have SDRs work, sales development reps working from home? How do you coach people when you're in a remote environment?
Yeah.
You would have Gong and you would have John Barrows joining forces, putting their network together, creating content that was really helping people. And I think what I've seen is that more and more people have taken that approach into their content strategy moving forward. So that excites me because it's more valuable content and it raises the bar. And it means that kind of like shit marketing doesn't work as much anymore, because that annoys me when there's a bad product that's marketed well. But it isn't a great product. It's not a good experience. I really don't like that, because you're beating somebody who has a better product, but maybe doesn't have the resource that they have. What else excites me? I think the growth of podcasting obviously excites me from a business point of view as well. One of the non-business things that excites me about podcasting is that so many people can learn. I've got a friend of mine has a girlfriend who has just finished university. She didn't study marketing, but is thinking about doing a master's or further education in marketing. And I didn't say this straight away, because I've learned not to not to answer questions when I wasn't asked for the answer or for the help. But I was like, you don't need to go to university to study marketing. You
Right.
can use the HubSpot blog. Look at Impact, a really great inbound marketing agency, which is a HubSpot partner. They've got amazing free resources. You've got Moz and SEMrush for
Yeah.
SEO. All of these big software companies who are kind of the giants in the category of producing content to help you. And then podcasts are just a perfect way to find out what's happening right now. So Claude Hopkins, Scientific Advertising, if you want to understand marketing and advertising and psychology, it was written decades ago, but it's still relevant. If you want to find out how to leverage TikTok or Clubhouse for your business, listen to podcasts. So get the theory from the books and then listen to the tactics and what's working right now from podcasts. And I just think the more podcasts there are, even if it has a small audience, but if they're delivering value, it's really, really good.
So true. That combination is powerful. Did you just mention a book just now?
Yeah, it's Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising. I can't remember when it originally came out, but he's one of the godfathers of, I guess, direct copy and direct response copywriting and advertising. He's behind some very, very famous ads. I think I know I'm not going to even attempt because I'll get it confused with somebody else. But so the old print ads was Claude Hopkins.
Okay, great. I'll have to check that out.
No worries.
Wow. The things you learn on podcasts, things I
I
learn on
know.
podcasts, you know? Yeah. My question next for you is just really like, who are you? You seem superhuman. You're doing the 75 hard thing. You're drinking non-alcoholic beer. You're running like 9 different companies. You're training people on the sales side with John and Gong and all these other people. Who are you? Who is this guy? Can you take me back in
I
time to like little Mark days? And what was it like? Did you always know you're going to be creating empires of mass proportions?
No, to be honest, I was a good student in the sense that I was pretty academic, but I wasn't the best. I think my grades are all C's, B's, and C's. I got a couple of A's, I think, in the subjects that I was interested in.
Yeah.
What I learned is when I'm interested in something, I will learn it and I will master that particular thing. Talk about soccer. A lot of my friends follow soccer, football. I just don't have that much of an active interest in it. At the beginning of every season, I'm just like, I'm going to keep on top of the Premier League. I'm going to know who's playing who, what the scores were. It just goes in one ear and out the other because I'm just not that interested.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, learning languages, I really struggle because, again, I come from a very lucky place where I was born in the UK. I speak English, and you go to foreign countries and a lot of other people speak English. So is there a need for me to learn English?
Yeah.
No. So when that need isn't there, I really struggle to make the space in my brain to learn it. But you ask me for an introduction to anybody in marketing or sales that works in a specific category or industry, and I can reel off their name straight away. But going back,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was relatively academic, but my mum and dad always worked for large companies. My mum was a career executive assistant, personal assistant, working for some of the largest companies like GlaxoSmithKline and BA
Wow.
and BP. My dad worked for 30 years for the same company, and whenever I was growing up, it was go to school, work hard, get a good job, or get a job, and they'll look after you. And in 2007, 2008, just when I was in my second year of university, my dad was made redundant, and he rang me, and he said, "Mark, I'm really sorry, but everything I told you was completely wrong. Like, it's not as secure as I was led to believe. I've worked for this company for 29, 30 years, and they just made me redundant. Like, they don't reward you for that for that loyalty." So that kind of started to trigger a little bit of my way of thinking started to become a little bit different. But I went into the corporate world. I went and joined one of the largest recruitment companies and got some really good training in recruitment and account management when I first started working. Then I went to a smaller recruitment agency where it was really scrappy. It was hand-to-hand combat. It was boiler room, pick up the phone, smile and dial, money comes out. The more dials you make, the more money you make. And it just taught me to be really scrappy with stuff. And by that, I mean not necessarily doing bad things to get what you want, but going above and beyond and doing things differently. If your colleagues are doing this and that, and they're getting these results, you can do the same and get the same results. But if you do something differently, you have the opportunity to create more or get better results. And after working in the corporate world, I went into HR internal. I saw the boxes that people were put in, and I would have lots of excuse me one second.
Yeah. No worries, man. It's
I,
funny. I normally rag on HR because what I've experienced is HR is either amazingly brilliant or absolutely terrible, and I and there's not too many
yeah,
in between. Um,
that's true.
yeah.
I would be in interviews with I was funny enough recruiting sales and marketing people for this big large company, and the sales account manager would come to me and go, "Mark, I want to apply for this role." And I'd say, "Sorry, Steve, you can't because you're a grade F and this role is a grade D. You can't jump from F to D. You have to go up to E." In the employee grading,
Interesting.
every large company has these.
Got it.
And then he said, "So if I left and came back in 12 months, I could apply for that role, that category." And I was like, yeah, yes, that's I would be able to look at your application because he didn't then go off and leave, but people did that. And
Hmm.
I saw people just going like this between the two competitors just to move up. And I just thought, I do not want to be in this situation where I'm put in a box.
Yeah.
I was called a renegade or a lone wolf as well. When I worked in this, I was brought into this HR function with this specific instruction to bring your agency experience, your hunger, your hunting, to bring in and find people. But don't go and headhunt people from the competition. You're not allowed to do that. But go out and find people. Reduce our agency spend. I reduced our agency spend so much that it made the rest of my team look really, really bad. And then the head of talent was like, "Stop being such a lone wolf. You're making everybody look bad." So I was just like, yeah, this isn't for me. Where I can't go out and practice and utilize my skill and my craft because it's making other people look bad. Yet it's creating amazing results for the business. Why would I want to do that day in, day out? Why
Yeah.
would I want to constantly not be my best just because of everybody else? So that kind of gave me a little bit of an anti-corporate or stick it to the man. I don't want to be put in a box. Over the subsequent years, I went and worked in marketing. I was the first digital marketer, which allowed me to start building stuff. So whether that be building the website, building out the CRM, the marketing automation. And I think a bit of luck in terms of timing. There wasn't really many people that knew how to implement HubSpot. And if I look at the two most previous roles that I was employed basically because I implemented HubSpot in the previous company, and
Huh.
they needed somebody to come in to implement HubSpot and digitalize their marketing function, and that's what I did. Then I went traveling for a year. I took an early retirement. Didn't have enough money, so I could only go away for a year. But
Early retirement with 30 bucks,
yeah,
30
but no,
pounds.
I saved enough money so that I could have put down on a mortgage. And if I'm honest, Casey, I just thought, F this, I'm just going to go and have fun for a year. So I
Yeah.
traveled. Whilst I did travel, one of my old bosses got in touch with me and said, would you be able to help one of my friends' companies build out their HubSpot implementation? And I said, yes, I can, but I don't really want to. And he said, Mark, you name a price that you're happy with, make it a big price. If they say yes, you have to be happy with that and you have to be available to actually do the work. If they say no, then that's fine. So I named a price, which was far more than I'd ever kind of thought of quoting at all for this sort of work. And they said yes. And then I just thought, wow, I'm in Santiago, Chile.
Wow.
I've just extended the seven extra days in a hostel. I've booked a really nice hotel for a couple of nights to spend some of the money I just earned. I can do this from wherever. It's a skill that's in demand, and it pays well. And this could be what I do for the rest of my life. So
Wow.
that moment for me was, I'm not going back to a 9 to 5 job, and I've never looked back since.
So you've traveled around and you've been remote. So you're in Portugal now. You were in Chile, then Portugal. Now, where else has this gypsy
Ooh,
journey taken you? This digital
yeah.
marketing.
So I went to South America for 6 months and then Southeast Asia for 6 months. And that was mainly just traveling, no work.
Okay.
And then I came back to London for 6 or 9 months and I'd caught the bug of travel. I knew I could just pick up my laptop and go and work from anywhere. And I just thought, I love my family, love my friends, but I don't need to be here. And I always had that desire to go and explore somewhere else. So then I went to Thailand. So this is working now, having my own business. Thailand, Hong Kong, no, not Hong Kong, Thailand, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, the Philippines, also Bali for a few months. Went to Europe over summer. I just basically
And
go
this
where
is
my
why you're
friends
working
are.
too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I went for 2 months in Greece because two of my friends, they're married, they run a company out there, love them to pieces, and I can just go and chill with them for 2 months in Greece, and then move on somewhere else and just kind of follow some friends around, or friends come to me. It's ultimate freedom, and yeah, it's something that I really enjoy.
And you're still moving around. It's still
Yeah, so no, so that's
no.
a good question. So
Yeah.
I've stopped the travel, one because of COVID, so you can't
Oh,
travel
good
as
good
much
call. Yeah,
at the
yeah.
moment. However, my parents have just retired and moved to Spain, which is like a very typical British thing to do, as you retire and move to the Costa del Sol.
Oh, is that the thing?
They
It's not like you don't go to Provence, you go to Spain.
Yeah. It's almost like, Florida, I think in the US is where everyone goes to retire, right?
It's like they're Florida.
Yeah, pretty much,
That's
pretty much.
awesome.
So they've moved and they're selling the family house in the UK, and I've always had that as a base. So my parents I'm 33, but my parents always said, there's a room here. If you ever need to come back, you can come back. You always can come home. So go off, do whatever you want to do. And I think that's one thing I'm very thankful and very grateful for to my family, is that they've always encouraged me to try something. And if I
Yeah.
fail or it doesn't work out, not whether I fail, it just didn't work out, that's fine. So I had such a safe environment to try and experiment and to
Yeah.
go and leap and try new things. And if they didn't work out, there was no consequences of doing so. So I'm very lucky and very grateful for that. But yeah, they've just moved to Spain, and I don't have a base now. Of course, I'm going to visit them next month in Spain. But I decided that actually I want to have a base somewhere, so that I can, I can put some roots down, and I'm, like I said, a very social person. I have no problem meeting new friends and making new friends. But I started to miss the friends that I met 6 months ago that I only met for 6 months and then had to move on, and it all became very transient, and I wanted a little bit more stability. So, and then Brexit happened,
Oh,
and I now have European residency because I applied for it before Brexit came into effect. So I am a European citizen, not a for the purpose of traveling around Europe. I can travel like an other European citizen, not like a British person can now because of Brexit.
ooh. So what changed for you when that happened? Like what happens or not for you because you got the residency
Mm-hmm.
in the EU.
If
Is it much
if I
harder now?
didn't if I didn't have the residency, I may have to, in the individual European countries I go to, I'd have to apply potentially for a visa to go in, and that visa may only be for 30 days. It's still so fluid,
Yeah.
and I think it will be for the next couple of years. But in 3 years, 4 years time, it's going to be no, you can't come in this country without that visa. So I can't remember what the terminology is, but it's that freedom of travel.
Hmm.
I have that now, which is what we've always enjoyed, being part of the EU, but we don't have that anymore
And so that lets
now
you
with
stay
Brexit.
in Portugal for however long you want, and you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, yeah, and then after 5 years, I can apply to become a legal citizen and resident in legal citizen within Portugal too.
Is that the plan? Or is the base there? Where's the
Yeah,
base?
potentially. Yeah. I think it's amazing people, beautiful city, great cost of living, and there's beaches, there's sun. I've
What's the
kind of
city called in Portugal?
Lisbon.
Oh, you're in
Lisbon.
Lisbon. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm pretty much right in the middle of Lisbon in a place called Santos. But
Wow.
yeah, it's just if I drew a checklist, I didn't actually put a checklist together, and I was ticking off boxes. This Lisbon has everything.
Wow. Look at it. I'm just a little Google map action here. Wow. So it has everything, huh? So see, I really respect you saying that because I know you've been to a lot of places. So all the Southeast Asia and Thailand and South America, Portugal. What about
Yeah.
that speaks to you the
So
most?
so for me, it's the perfect combination of a laid back and relaxed culture, yet things still work. And there's not as much corruption here. So to give some context, in Bali, you're driving on a motorbike, the police will pull you over and they'll say that they're fining you and you just have to give them some money and then you can drive on. That's just the way that it's accepted that they do, and they make money out of tourists that way. Um, South America, I didn't really experience that, but I definitely did pay the gringo tax. I'm obviously not from Colombia. As soon as I start speaking, they can hear my accent and they definitely know I'm not from the area. And you just get
Right.
charged a lot more for things, just in general. And
Right.
that's not Colombia, sorry. That's just in general, in traveling. As a tourist, there's usually like a tourist tax. But Portugal is just perfectly in the middle. Like things work, there is efficiency. Yeah, it's pretty slow and laid back, but you've just got to adapt to that. But like I said, the people here are great. There's a great expat community. There's good integration with the locals. I'm volunteering here as well, doing CV editing for migrants that are here in Lisbon.
Oh,
There's just
nice.
so much to offer. So yeah, it's when you can live anywhere, it's a big decision to pick one place to live for a while. But like I said, it felt right.
It feels right. So that home base is there, or
Yeah,
potentially is.
potentially. Yeah. That's a big
Congratulations, man.
commitment. Thank you.
How's your Portuguese?
Terrible. It's really not too good, but something I should definitely work on when I find the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Hit the Pimsleur or the Rosetta Stone, or you try to
Yeah.
add those things in there. Wow. Well, tell me a little bit. You eventually, I know you've started a lot of companies and endeavors. I'd love to hear about the Speak on podcast because we talked a little bit about podcasts earlier, and it's a company you founded obviously to help people speak on podcasts, but I'd love to hear about even just this concept because it's a new type of company, or it seems
Yeah.
like it is.
Yeah. So where it started was I was previously running a 100-person remote business called Task Drive, and I was brought in as the general manager to mainly fix things, make things more efficient, and then help with the sales process and put in a more repeatable, scalable sales process. And I kind of within a year I did that, and I kind of did everything that I was supposed to do. I built the things that I needed to build. And then I was almost like an architect looking at the final complete building, thinking like, oh, my work here is done.
Yeah.
Where's the next project? Where does that start? In the last 4 months of working there, I was actually pitching myself and some of the co-founders onto podcasts. One was in e-commerce, one was in around coaching, I was around sales. And I managed to secure around 35, 40 podcasts in about 3 or 4 months. And I thought, this is great because I'm a recruiter and I'm doing matchmaking, just like I used to match people to jobs. Instead, I'm matching people to podcasts. And then it's all outbound sales. It's rather than pitching about a product or service, I'm introducing a guest or the idea of a
It is
guest
like
to a
recruiting. I
podcast.
totally, I
Yeah.
totally see that.
So
Yeah.
it's recruiting and it's outbound sales, two things that I know very, very well. So I thought I'm good at it, it's working, and there must be a need for people out there that need the help with this. Now, like with most services cases, you'll know, especially with your marketing background, you could learn to do it yourself if you had the time and if that's what your focus was. And we often work with companies and people, and if they're not quite the right fit for us, we might say, here's how you do it yourself, and here's a guide we've put together, because you're just not at the stage where, I don't want to take the lion's share of your budget to get you on podcasts when actually you need leads and lead gen, and this isn't the best strategy for you. But if you want to do it, here's the guide of how you can do that. So yeah, had been doing it, got some success, as in seeing the positive impact. Q1 of 2020, just before COVID hit, 40% of revenue at Task Drive was attributed to a podcast.
Jeez.
Again, I was in a great niche. I had a very different message to everybody else, and I talked very eloquently about the problems we help people solve. So I think there's a mixture of my kind of public speaking ability as well as the niche market. But yeah, so after that, I kind of spoke to the CEO and I said, hey, look, I'm thinking about doing my own thing. I want to build something from scratch, because I came in and I fixed a lot of things in this business which I would never have set up in that way the first time. Right. So I was
Somebody
like, I want a
else's...
blank. Yeah. And as much as I enjoyed it, I was like, I want a blank canvas where I can build it, quote unquote, perfectly from scratch. And as I had this conversation with the CEO, he completely respected where I was coming from, could see that I was more passionate to do my own thing. And he introduced me to my now co-founder, Jakob, who was also running his own business, but it was just him doing podcast guest outreach to people.
Interesting.
And we had a conversation. I think it was an hour conversation. And right at the end of the call, I was like, you seem like a good guy. I hope you think I'm a good guy. Why fight each other and compete when we could probably join forces and build something quicker and bigger than we could do individually?
Yeah.
And we started from there. We'd never met. He lives in Czech Republic. I was living in Greece, I think, at the time. And we started building this business together in January. So from January, we just had me and him, no revenue, no team members. And now we've just this week hired our 16th team member.
Wow.
Completely across the globe now. And it's getting to the point where I have to really look at everybody's names. Like when everybody joins Zoom, I'm just like, who's missing? There's somebody missing, but there's so many faces to kind of take in. I'm just like, oh, it's Julia. We'll see where she is.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's been a 9-month journey, but it's been an incredible journey so far.
Sick, man. It seems like it's almost like modern PR,
It is. We've actually got we're rebranding at the moment. We're not ready to launch, and one of our branding mock-ups says FPR,
Nice.
because we're not sure how much we're going to push this, but I can't remember the last time I read a press release and thought, oh, I'm going to go and check out that company.
Right.
And so many brands are still doing press releases, and I get, yes, for media relations, especially if you're raising funds and going through fundraising, that is important. But for the B2B SaaS companies that I've worked with for the last 7-8 years, putting out a press release, knowing that the majority of people aren't going to pick it up, those that pick it up will post it, and no one's going to read it. And it's actually not, it's all about you. It's not
Yeah.
about your customer and not about the problem and challenges that you help overcome. It's just shit. It doesn't work. And that's my honest opinion. Maybe that should have been the first thing that we spoke about as a myth. And also, yeah, but PR, in my opinion, is very company centric. We're doing this. This is what we're doing. Whereas when you're speaking on podcasts as a medium, or even content, it doesn't have to be podcasts, but content. If you're solving the problems that your customers have, you're encouraging the right sort of people to come into your universe, your wheelhouse, and then you can eventually they'll convert and you'll sell to them. So
Jeez.
yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but that's hopefully answered a few questions.
No, and I got to introduce you to KJ, Carla Joe. She runs a PR firm, but she calls it anti-PR.
Nice. Yeah.
She just can't handle the crap that's out there. So you guys would be fun together, especially if you do go with
Yeah.
that brand.
Definitely.
Throwing a little
Definitely.
shade at the PR, the old school PR. Like, what would I hire you for? But I would definitely hire you to get on some podcasts and because the journalists of today are it's the micro journalism, right? It's not the big ABC, NBC. It's the 100 or maybe the top 10
Mhm.
influencing podcasts in a particular area or for a particular audience
Yeah.
group.
But again, I'm listening to a book at the moment. It's really about launching products. So this is something I don't really read books about podcasts. I read kind of things on the tertiary that I can then introduce in
Totally.
what I'm doing.
Totally.
So this book is about 12 months to a million. He previously sold a protein, I think it was a protein powder business,
God, that's what they always do.
supplement.
They always sell protein
Yeah,
and they get
yeah,
friggin' vitamin people. It drive me bonkers. Tim Ferriss had
yeah,
the
I
same
know.
thing, and yeah.
Well, he talks about Tim. He also talks about Joe Rogan. And what
Yep.
if you've got a direct-to-consumer brand, and you have an influencer like Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan mention the brand, or if it's nootropics and Joe Rogan actually became a partner in one of the he's using examples as he talks through the
He's
book.
like on it, right? He's doing the on it thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, it was on it. So it was the guy that originally founded on it. He met Joe Rogan, went for lunch with him. Don't know how that happened, but went for lunch. He
Yeah.
didn't have a nootropics thing. He just asked Joe, "What are you interested in right now?" Joe Rogan said nootropics, and he said, I'm going to create the best nootropics supplement." He had no idea what he was doing. He went off, research. 6 months later, comes back, presents it, and the rest is history. Obviously a lot more goes into these
Yeah.
things, but if you've got a direct-to-consumer brand going on these much large podcasts with huge reach and a broad reach, it's fine, because if you have a fitness related thing or productivity or self development, then they're a
Yeah.
great podcast to go out for. But when it comes to B2B specifically, and then you look at PR, you've got influencer marketing, which whatever's worked in B2C 3 or 4 years ago is going to usually work in one shape or form in B2B a few years later. So really getting into podcasts and getting speaking on podcasts right now, this evergreen content that you're going to have forever. And that's why. So you actually asked what I haven't explained what we do. I'm not really here to do a
No,
sales
yeah,
pitch,
totally.
but we help our customers speak on 24 podcasts in 6 months. That's kind of the engagement that we have with them. And some people say that's too much. Other people say they want more. But we find that having that consistent story out there on several different podcasts over a longer period of time. But what's great is evergreen. So I get people replying to me saying, "Mark, I really enjoyed your interview with Brian Burns on the Brutal Truth show. I recorded that 14, 15 months ago, but I still get people connecting with me because
Really?
people go to podcasts to solve a problem. Oftentimes they go there to, so like I said, I learn what's working now by listening to podcasts, not reading a book that came out 10 years ago, because that book's already out of date. By the time the book is written, then published through the publishing houses, it's already out of date. I studied marketing at university. We didn't even learn about digital marketing.
I know. I know.
It's just you can't, the process of a book can't keep up with it, but a podcast can, because I could try something tomorrow, call you, Casey, and say, "Hey, Casey, this worked. Can we talk about it?" We could do a live, and it will be out there the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power that podcast and the medium of podcasting has.
Yeah, it really is instantaneous, especially if
Mm,
we're riffing off each other, coming up with ideas. And, I'm even thinking about, how a company that creates podcasts can partner with a company that books podcasts. And there's some, there's some, there's a value that goes, that kind of circles around. And if I have access to a network of 50 podcasts that specifically target the thing that you're interested in targeting. There's some value to you. And so it's cool. We can riff on these things. We can create them tomorrow, and
Yeah,
people can learn and be inspired from our conversation,
definitely.
today.
And to any company starting out now and they haven't started their marketing, they don't know where to start with their content strategy. What I would personally do is do discovery calls with potential customers
Yeah.
and just do a workshop with them and say, look, we're going to record this and we're going to chop it up into a blog post. We're going to chop it up. So I mentor some startups through the Growth Mentor platform. You see all these things on my LinkedIn, Casey, and you referenced it before. Not all of these is a full-time job. Some of them is very much as and when I get the call and then I jump in and help out. So the coaching side of things is very much reactive. It's not something that I'm doing day in, day out. But I just had a call today with somebody who they have an online course platform. They sell in the Netherlands and to Belgium. And I asked them, he's kind of got to a point where he's stuck with his marketing. And we had a 20-minute conversation, and he said within 10 minutes, he got the answer he was looking for. And then we riffed on some other things as well. Now, if you are somebody who has a level of domain knowledge expertise, just offer your time to people. You'll get, I always get asked, what's the best CRM? And I say, how long is a piece of string? Like, there is no silver bullet. It depends on your service. It depends on your integrations that you need. I get that question all the time, but I could answer that question in 20 different ways, depending on who's asking me that question.
Sure.
So that's 20 pieces of content I could potentially repurpose just from having a conversation. So I think there's something here that I haven't really formulated into a more articulate way, but, conversation-based marketing. I don't know, not through chatbots, but ask people what they need help with, give them the answer, and then repurpose the content. It's the quickest and easiest way to do it.
Yeah, there really is magic to it, on all the different fronts. In several times I've actually, this podcast, right? So I did write a book, and I'm trying to get as many hands as possible before it dies.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's about strategy, so marketing strategy.
Okay.
So it should last a little longer, but it
Hmm.
is specifically on marketing automation. So as long as there is still marketing automation on the
Yeah,
planet, we're
there is.
good.
But
But in strategies, but you're right though. And so one of the ways I filled my book and even my brain on some of the topics that I'm not as specific on, not a
mhm,
genius on landing page optimization, was just to interview people on this podcast about those
yeah.
topics and obviously cite them in the book and promote those people. But I've learned so much. And then more recently, when we were launching an ABM program at Treasure Impact, internally, our own, I
Hmm.
would interview experts. I mean, Sangram, he wrote the book, he wrote 2 books on
Yeah,
it. And I'd be
he did.
asking
Yeah.
him, dude, what is X? What is Y? How do we do this? And other
Hmm.
practitioners. And they're literally telling me on the podcast. And I'm sure people are thinking, man, those are great questions, Casey. That's because they're real. I'm
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
trying to
yeah.
learn this stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And but you go back to marketing automation. So another area that I have quite deep
Yeah,
knowledge
no,
of.
it sounds like it.
And it's every automation, it's what I think what's really interesting. If you want to learn anything quickly, just understand the logic of it. Selling is about starting conversations. In its simplest of terms, it's having conversations with people. What makes the conversation more valuable? Having answers to problems that people have. That's as easy as I could sum up sales. Marketing automation, there's a trigger, a condition, and an action. Once you know that there's those three things with marketing automation, the world of possibilities is endless. And I love tools like Zapier for this because it does open up so many things. But if you can think of everything in your business with what's the trigger, what's the condition? So the condition is usually an if this then that statement. So if they've subscribed to my newsletter but they haven't, and the condition is but they haven't opened in the last 6 months, then the action is to maybe stop bloody sending them the newsletter.
Right.
But trigger, condition, action. Any process, if you can fit it into those things, it could be automated. And
What is
I think
trigger for
Casey,
you? What is trigger for you in
trigger
that?
is when an event has happened or a time has elapsed. So opened an email, visited the website, or has been a customer for 3 months or a
Yeah,
customer for 1 month.
I like that.
And we even use this kind of logic in our onboarding, even though we don't have a software product. We don't have technology looking at behavioral based things, but we've broken down the onboarding process into several stages. At the end of every stage, it's like, Casey, we've finished week one. In
Yay.
week one, we've done X, Y, and Z. We're super excited to get to stage two, where we're going to be working on your topics and we're going to be researching some podcasts. you're not going to hear from us for a week, but don't worry, we're still doing the work behind the scenes. You'll hear from us again in 10 days time, or whatever the time frame is. And it's just continuously over communicating with the customer. And I say this quite often in the company. It's just always communicate with the customer. Even if you feel you're unnaturally communicating too much, keep doing it until the customer tells you not to. When the customer tells us not to, we'll say, okay, well, we're still going to talk to you. How often do you want us to communicate with you? We'll work on your terms. But until then, we're going to, and it's not saying the same thing. It's the different things that we're saying.
Yeah.
Like, we're not annoying them, but yeah, it's that constant communication, and always never make the assumption that they know what we're doing, because we know what we're doing, but they don't.
Yeah, and it may seem like over communication because you're in it all the time, but for
Yeah,
someone who's never been there before, that might be just really reassuring. Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I knew you had said that, but that was
yeah,
great to see that on email and reminded
and
me. Or we know people forget too. What, you said that
yeah.
on a phone call? Yeah, we did, but that's
Well,
okay.
that's
Here's a
it. Yeah,
reminder.
that will be the response I get from the team. It's like, oh no, we told them when we had the sales call, and I
Yeah,
was like, that was one call in their day. It was a 30-minute call on the 15th of
yeah.
February.
You told them
We
15 things.
Yeah, and that you want them to remember that one thing, and also I remind my team, and I mean it in the nicest way, like, we're a tiny part of our customers' lives. We are just a really small part, and actually they've outsourced the hassle to us. So it's our job to kind of make sure we do a great job, but just don't take it personally when they're not responding to you. It's just because we are a service provider. We're a very good service provider, but we're just one part of their bigger daily routine. So I tell my team, like, don't get discouraged if you're not hearing back, and don't be afraid of communicating more. People are busy, and as a service provider, you are lower on the list of things that people need to get through on a day-to-day basis, and I understand that, and we don't take it personally.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant way of approaching that. I mean, there's so many notes there on just how to do business and how to over communicate. I have a hypothetical question for you.
Cool.
I may or may not have a time machine here in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Hmm.
It's in the backyard under a tarp. So you get to use it, after COVID, come visit, we'll get some lobster and use the time machine. You get to go back in time and you get to visit yourself. And the time frame, the trigger for this action
Hmm.
here is a couple days after university, right?
Ooh.
So you've graduated or you've left, or so you've graduated, and a couple days after, in case you partied hard, gave you a few
Hmm.
days after, you get to go see yourself then. What kind of advice, what kind of things would you tell yourself, knowing all the places you've been and all the experiences you've had and the work you've done? What sort of tips would you give yourself? What advice?
Ooh, that's a great hypothetical question. I personally, just before I answer the question, like, I'm very, like, where I am now, I'm very happy with where I am, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily change anything, because every decision I've made, unintentionally or intentionally, has resulted in me being where I am right now, and I probably wouldn't change that time frame, because it would, I'm extremely content where I am. I think what I would have said to myself, I didn't always have that understanding of, the more you give without expecting anything in return, the more that will come out to you. The more people you speak to, the more you open you increase your opportunity surface area for things to come your way. And I think in line with that, I would have said, build that. So there's a blog post that I've got in my head, Casey, which I haven't written out yet, which is almost like creating an ecosystem around you. So I'll give an example. In the sales world, when I worked at TaskDrive, I could help people with their data and lead enrichment. But I would speak to people and they're like, Mark, we need help with our cold emails. Mark, we need help with training our sales reps. Mark, we need help with onboarding. We need help hiring. So I was speaking to people. I had my foot in the door in a very non-threatening way, and I was finding out all of these problems that people had. So I never like to put down the phone without having helped somebody. So I think, well, let me go and find 3 companies that can help with cold email writing. Let me go and find the best recruiters for sales reps. Let me go and find some really good training for salespeople. And then I can just make introductions. And I can easily turn around and say, I can't help you with that, but these are people that I trust, I vetted for you. Go and speak to them. Some of them I might make a referral fee, others I don't. I can tell you which ones I do, I can tell you which ones I don't, or you can just go blindly and do it. I'm not doing it for the monetary value. So that's what I did at TaskDrive. So anybody that came to me, no matter what problem they had to do with sales, I was able to introduce them to the various people that they needed to speak to help them. Again, didn't have to do that. Could have just gone, that's not a sale, phone down. But that's not my mentality. And I think had I take me back to a few days after graduating, I would have said, Mark, build that value network around you sooner and much larger, because it grows every week, every month. But if I did that 8 years before I started doing it, it would be a huge network, and I'd probably be a lot more monetary wealthy than I am now, because it would have had years of compounding interest to it. Did that make sense? I don't know whether that was okay.
And what's interesting is almost no one, in fact, no one has ever asked to alter their past, which is really interesting. No one's ever, the Back to the Future movies with like don't change the future, your sister will disappear on the photo and all. No one, maybe that's not actually a risk, because no one has suggested that they want to change any of that. It's almost like there's that understanding that that's led you to where you're at. Now, maybe it's because the people we talk to are successful, but still people have had their lumps, we've all had our bumps and whatnot, but everyone, it's almost like they respect the past, but they'd almost encouraging yourself to do more of something as opposed to less of something.
Absolutely. Add to something that, so I'll open up a little bit here. My co-founder Jakob, he's a little bit younger than me. I think he's 26. I'm 33. Lived a little bit longer than him. Unfortunately, I've had some friends who have passed away between here and from uni until now. So my attitude to work and stuff, I'm busy. I have lots of different businesses, but I would say to Jakob, after 7, I'm not replying to you. And I mean that in a very loving and caring way. I'll reply to you tomorrow, but I'm not going to talk work. I'm not going to talk shop after 7. I'm going to switch off mentally and switch off the laptop. If I'm hanging out with friends, I never have my phone. I have my phone on me, but I'm not looking at my phone. I'm very present in the moments that I have. And I think I've learned that because I've realized that life is very short, and it can change very drastically, very quickly. And working with Jakob, who hasn't experienced that, I am trying to, and he wouldn't mind me sharing this with you, I'm trying to say to him, like, don't work over the weekend. Just, no one's going to die. There's always going to be more stuff that we need to do. If you don't do something right now, it's not going to ruin the business. Just find that time to step back and rest and recuperate and recharge. It's really, really important, because you could die tomorrow. And if you died and you were busy and feeling really stressed all the time, then isn't a life worth living.
So Mark, that is not a normal thing. That's a really cool behavior that you've adopted. Almost the status quo is you're addicted. I mean, sometimes even the drama of work, like, oh, the little endorphin hit, like, oh, it's bad news, it's good news, but either way it's news and I want to look at it. Sorry, I have to excuse myself from dinner with my friends because something's burning, how was it gradual or was it sudden where you decided just like fuck off after 7, or where did that come from?
It's really gradual, and it's not every night. In fact, last night we had so much going on, that so many fires to put out across the various things that I was running. And actually, I need, side note, sorting out tax residency in Portugal.
Oh God.
Very last minute, had to go and sort it out this morning. That's what I was like dealing with last night. I was supposed to meet a friend for dinner, and I cancelled because I was like, look, I'm so swamped with this thing that I actually have to do tomorrow. I can't. So no life is perfect. You can't control everything. Sure. But I think where the big changing point for me, Casey, was the first lockdown. So this time last year, my freedom was completely my freedom, very privileged freedom of being able to travel anywhere. It was taken away. And I was like, well, I can't do anything about it. The government is saying you have to stay in, you've got to go to the shop between this time and that time. It's out of my control. So just accept it. And that acceptance, and then I applied that kind of acceptance to other things in my life, like personal and work. And I've just become a lot more, I'm extremely driven. And another friend asked me, Mark, how do you manage all these businesses, but also still find time to switch off? And I say no to things. And
Mm,
if I don't feel like doing something and I'm forcing myself to do it and I'm tired and I just don't have the mental capacity or the spark left, I just won't do it. But it's not because I'm lazy. It's just that I know that this isn't the best use of my time right now.
right.
And if I need to turn the laptop off at 5 and just watch some Netflix just because I need to recharge a little bit, fine. Like I go for walks and come up with some really creative ideas. That's where I get the ideas. It's not me sitting at this laptop going, all right, be creative, Mark, be creative. So I've just learned I have to give myself that space. And I think it's really just learning what works for you. I don't know about you, Casey, morning routines. I was so stressed that I didn't have a morning routine because I felt like that's what I had to have.
Mm,
Like you wake up, you meditate for 5 minutes, you then stretch for 15, you then drink this drink. And I was like, oh crap, I don't have one. I must need one. And then after a little bit of trial and error, I was just like, I don't need one.
right.
I don't. Just because that's what the blog post says, or I'm a very logical and process orientated person, so I'm always like, well, what's the steps that I need to follow? And sometimes
Right.
there isn't. It's just understanding like from an intuitive point of view, what works for you and what doesn't.
Booyah. Dude,
Yeah.
you are a gentleman and a scholar. You're a
Thank you, Casey.
philosopher king. I should
Well,
rename the show Philosopher Kings, like in Queens. It's really cool to see like the you that's driven, and you can see why all these things happen is because you're driven, but you're always constantly challenging it and balancing it out
yeah,
and staying in that
I've not
zone.
been asked any of these questions, so really, really good for me to just riff and completely off
Yeah.
the cuff come up with the answers. So thank you. Thanks for pushing me.
Well, for me, it's the real person, right? It's fun to, you know, pick up a strategy or two with marketing and then just understand people, and it
Yeah.
helps connect. I think you get more empathy for people. Someone was like, what kind of games can I play with my company to get more empathy with my team? And it's like, well, empathy comes from knowing more about someone. So
Hmm.
just try to play some games where they learn more about each other, and then that that can come naturally just the more you know. So I feel like I know you so much better now, and
Definitely. I'm looking forward to
what
this beer
ticks.
and the time machine as well.
Yes, yes. Beer, time machine, lobster, all that. Hey, where can people connect with you if they want to reach out? Throw out social platforms, throw out URLs, all that jazz.
Yeah. Okay. So LinkedIn is probably the best place. So I'm Mark Colgan. There's not too many on there. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, just let me know that you heard me on the Hardcore Core Marketing podcast, and then markcolgan.co.uk is the best place to find out the various different projects I'm involved in, and they all have links to the various pages and whatnot. But yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to chat.
Does it have a little pin that says where you're currently at? Like currently in Portugal, Lisbon.
Yeah, no, I did try doing it, and I'd always forget to update it
You,
again.
yeah.
Like yeah, but no, I need to update LinkedIn to say Lisbon. I'll do that this afternoon.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, I really appreciate you coming on here. It's been great to learn from you and chat and just shoot the shit and really get to know you.
I've really enjoyed it, Casey, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation too. So thank you so much.
Hell yeah, podcasts are here to stay, man. They're going to the
Indeed.
sky. It's the next rocket ship. So look forward to being in this ecosystem with you in this ride. So it'll be
Certainly.
fun. Cool.
Cheers, Casey. Thank
Well,
you so
hey, for
much.
those listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.